we go.
All set?
Set.
Okay, if you would all rise, please. This court is now in session. Honourable Judge Sweet presiding.
You want me to take your seat? All right. Mr. Ben Averill, what is the case today?
Today's case is State of New Hampshire versus Sidney Taylor.
Is the prosecution ready? We are, Your Honor. Is the defense ready?
We are, Your Honor.
All right. During this case, if any jury member cannot hear what is being said, please raise your hand. All right. Prosecution, you may begin with your opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you will hear the story of a young high school girl, Alex Day, who was stereotyped by an obsessive police officer, Officer Taylor, who overstepped his bounds in the pursuit of his moral crusade. This high school girl was whisked away from her hometown, her friends, and especially her father. The only item that was given to her that kept her and her father and daughter bond close was a New York Jets jacket. On September 23rd, 2005, Officer Taylor followed Alex Day to White Mountain Stadium during a football game. Officer Taylor followed Day behind the bleachers with her friends and thought that there was a situation that needed to be attended to. So she read her Day behind the bleachers and warned them to stop what they were doing and drew his weapon upon my client and fired upon them with no reason of suspicious activity that caused harm. Okay.
Thank you. The defense may begin their opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client, Sidney Taylor, is a commendable and dedicated man. Sidney Taylor is an excellent man that has devoted 12 years of his life to the police department and has protected you, the public, with his life. Sidney Taylor is no murderer. He did what his training told him to do, given the circumstances. Sidney is an excellent civil servant, and these allegations are an outrage. Sidney Taylor, ladies and gentlemen, is innocent.
All right, so that the prosecution may bring up the first witness.
Call Tony Sanchez upon the stand.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth and the whole truth about the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the court.
My name is Tony Sanchez, and I live at 58 Ridge Place, White Mountain, New Hampshire.
And how old are you, Tony?
I'm 17 years old.
Now, where do you go to school?
I go to White Mountain High School in White Mountain, New Hampshire.
And who lives at home?
I live with my parents and my brother and sister, who are both younger than me.
And what do you like to do for fun?
I like sports and watching TV, and I'm pretty good at art. Most of the time, though, I'm hanging out with my best friend, Alex Day.
And what is the relationship between you and Alex?
Alex Day and I met each other last year at a Main Street Gang party with his friends.
And are you a member of the Main Street Gang?
No, and neither is Alex. We just hung around because they threw great parties.
And were you and Alex close?
Alex and I got to be really close before I got busted and sent away.
Alright. What were you busted for?
That bus was a complete rip, okay?
And can you say what happened?
Just because I happened to be there when the cops came to break up a fight, I got arrested and charged with assault and possession of a firearm. The gun didn't even belong to me, it belonged to one of the other kids involved. But because I was there and I had previous encounters with the law, I got convicted.
What happened next?
I hated being locked up, so while I was in detention, I decided that when I got out, I would really try to stay out of trouble. I learned my lesson and I never want to come back.
What happened when you got out of detention?
Right after I got out, I got busted again, this time for a DWI.
What did your dad say?
My father is in the military, so he has pretty high expectations of me. I knew he was going to keep me on a short leash, but I really wanted to make the best of it. After the DWI bus, my dad was furious, but after talking, he knew that I really didn't want to over and leave and not get into any more trouble. He let me keep hanging out with Alex because he knew that Alex wanted to live up to the promise she made to her dad.
From what she told you, what promise did Alex make to her father?
Well, Alex was in New Jersey with her dad. He gave her a really nice BMW. The only condition was that Alex had to stay out of trouble in order to keep the car. Alex loved that car, so I knew she would never jeopardize it, and I didn't want any more heat from my dad or the cops.
And why would Officer Taylor tell you to stop hanging out with Alex?
Sydney said that if I kept hanging out with Alex, we would just keep getting into more and more trouble, and eventually somebody was going to get killed. I didn't know that meant that Sydney was going to try to kill Alex.
And can you tell the court what happened during the night of September 23rd, 2005?
On September 23rd, 2005, Alex and I got together during the day at school. We had plans to go to the homecoming game. She's a pretty big football fan, especially the Jets, and we knew that everybody would be going to the game, so we decided to go too. She said she'd pick me up at my house.
And when did she pick you up?
She came to pick me up around 7 p.m.
Right after being picked up, where did you guys go?
We headed straight to the stadium, but right as we got there, Sydney Taylor was waiting for us.
And to your knowledge, do Alex and Officer Taylor have any sort of relationship?
They didn't really get along. Sydney thinks that Alex is a big-time drug dealer at our school. Alex sort of gave Sydney a little bit of a hard time in the parking lot where he was collecting money. I think it made Sydney mad, but then again, everything Alex does makes Sydney mad.
And did you and Alex separate after the game?
No, we were together the whole time. She never left my side, and she didn't have anything to drink. She drove fine on the way there, and she didn't do anything weird once we got there. She was definitely not intoxicated. My dad saw her when she picked me up. And if she gave any sort of hint as to having been drinking, there's no way he would have let me get in that car.
And what happened after the game?
About halfway through the game, Alex's New York friend Bobby Davis came to sit with us. Some girls in front of us started hassling us and throwing popcorn. Alex was pretending to throw her soda on them, but when someone hit Alex's arm, soda went everywhere, and one of the girls got mad and went to talk to Principal Mathis and Sydney. Sydney came over to give us a hard time, and Bobby and I just sat there, but Alex saluted her. Sydney wasn't happy about that.
Now, what happened after the game?
Bobby wanted to go for a ride in Alex's new Beamer, so Alex told us to wait in the stands while she went to get her car. The next thing we know, Alex says the car underneath the bleachers. I knew she had to cut the lock on the gate to get there, but there were so many people around, I figured no one would know it was Alex, so I wasn't that worried about it.
What did you three do after Alex got in the car?
Bobby and I went down to the car. We were just standing around listening to music, nothing that justified getting shot at.
Alright. And were you holding anything?
Our hands were empty. I heard the cops thought they found spray paint bottles and beer cans that they thought belonged to us, but those were there when we got there. Alex just moved them away from the car so she wouldn't run over any of them. Lots of kids hanging around me during and after school. Those couldn't belong to any of them.
And were there any trash in her car?
No, Alex loved that car. She kept it insanely clean. There wasn't even a gun wrapper on the floor.
What happened next?
We heard Sydney call out to us. We were pretty surprised. We didn't even know Sydney was in the stadium, much less standing right next to us.
She was right next to you?
Well, I don't mean standing right next to us, but he could have been more than 35 or 40 feet away.
And what did Officer Taylor want to talk to you about?
He wanted to know what we were doing.
What did you say to Officer Taylor?
We didn't say anything. We wanted to give her a hard time. Little did we know it would make him so mad that he shooted us.
What happened right before Officer Taylor fired his weapon?
We were all trying not to laugh, but first Bobby cracked up and then Alex and I did too. The next thing we knew, there was a shot and Alex went down screaming.
Right after firing his weapon, what did Officer Taylor do?
Sydney ran up to us saying something about a gun. What gun? I yelled at him. I couldn't believe he shot at us. Right then, Bobby ran off. I haven't seen or heard from Bobby since that night.
Was Alex provoking Officer Taylor in any sort of way?
Alex didn't do anything to cause Sydney to believe that he was in danger. He's just a horrible cop who shouldn't have a gun. In fact, I'm surprised he hasn't shot anyone before.
Have you talked to Alex since the shooting?
I got to see Alex that night, which made me happy. She was doing good. We spent about half an hour, just the two of us in our hospital room.
Alright, and is there any sort of statement you can give the night before the night of the shooting?
I didn't give a statement because I was too weirded out. My main concern was making sure that Alex was okay. I went to the station the next day and gave one. Not that it makes much of a difference. They think I'm in a gang with Alex, so they won't believe a word I say. They think I just want to protect her.
Is there anything else you'd like the jury to know?
We're not in a gang. Just because Alex has a nice car and wears a Jets jacket, everybody assumes she's a dealer. It's discriminatory and it's completely bogus.
No more further questions.
All right, the defense may begin their consultation.
Hello, Johnny, how are you?
Better read
Where did you and Alex meet?
the Main Street gang.
hang out great parties?
Yes.
Nice. Were you convicted of assault and possession of a firearm?
Yes.
You said they were really going to try to stay out of trouble when you got out of the detention center, correct?
Yes.
What happened right after you were released?
Boston for DWI.
Where did Alex Day get his BMW from?
For now.
How could her dad afford a nice BMW when he was unemployed and lived in a poor section of Jersey City?
I don't know.
Did Officer Sidney Taylor tell you that hanging around Alex would not be beneficial to you and that you were just going to get into more trouble?
Yes.
Do you think that a trained police officer with 12 years of experience would be able to kill a person if they wanted to, particularly from close range, no more than 35 feet?
Yes.
So do you think that if Sidney Taylor's intention was to kill Alex Day, that he would be here today? Did you and Alex taunt Officer Taylor in the parking lot on September 23rd?
Yes.
You said that there was no way that Alex was intoxicated driving to the game during that night, correct?
Yes.
So how can you explain his blood alcohol level of 0.06 at the hospital that night, hours after the game?
I don't know.
Was Alex Day the one who broke into the field?
Yes.
Did you and Bobby and Alex stand around after the car after Alex broke the gate down and parked under the grandstand?
Yes.
Did the police find beer bottles and paint with Alex's fingerprints at the scene?
Yes, but they weren't hers.
Did Officer Sidney Taylor ask you what you were doing beneath the grandstands?
Yes.
What was your response?
Didn't answer.
Bobby ran from the scene, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever talked since?
No.
So you don't know why Bobby ran from the scene?
Probably because of your gunshots.
Couldn't Bobby have a gun and ran because he didn't want to get caught?
Yes.
Have you spent any time with Alex since the incident?
Yes.
You spent time, just the two of you, in the hospital room the night of the incident, correct?
Yes.
How long?
Half an hour.
So you and Alex were alone in this hospital room for half an hour, only a few hours after the incident occurred.
Yes.
You gave a statement to the police that night, correct?
No.
Oh, when did you give the statement then?
I gave one next morning.
After you visited with Alex that night?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
That's it. The state may bring up their second witness if they have any.
The prosecution calls Andy Medina to the stand. Please state your name for the court.
My name is Sergeant Andy Medina.
Sergeant Medina, where are you currently employed?
I've been a member of the White Mountain Police Department for 12 years. I attended the police academy in 1992 and have spent all my years since graduating from the academy in White Mountain.
In all your years, has anyone to your knowledge ever filed a complaint against you while you were on the job?
To my knowledge, I have a perfect record with the White Mountain Police Department. I've never been sued, nor has anyone lodged even a complaint against me for excessive force.
Are you familiar with Officer Taylor?
I am. He and I attended the academy together.
Has Officer Taylor ever had any complaints filed against him, professionally speaking?
I believe that he's been used as a scapegoat in a case where evidence was lost, and I'm also aware of a civil case in which he was charged with excessive force.
Now, what's going on with that civil case?
From the facts of the case, it's my understanding that there was little merit to it and that the department's lawyers figured it would be more expensive to go to trial and to win than just pay the other side $10,000.
Would you consider you and Officer Taylor friends?
I wouldn't call Officer Taylor my friend, but he and I were on the Fraternal Order of Police volleyball team, and we've gone out for beers several times.
To your first-hand knowledge, what happened on the night in question?
I was called to a disturbance on the night of September 23rd, 2005 at White Mountain High School football stadium. I was close to the stadium and I arrived there within 5 minutes of being dispatched. That particular neighborhood is notorious for gang activity, so I also called for backup.
What did you see when you first arrived?
When I arrived at the scene, I saw that the lights in the stadium were still on.
Could you clearly see under those bleachers?
I personally could, yes.
If someone were holding an object, like a weapon, for example, would you have been able to see it?
I like to think I would have been, but I have no way of being sure.
Okay, continue with your recollection of the night.
I entered through the south gate, which was already open. I noticed that a cut lock was on the ground by the gate. I immediately proceeded north, where I encountered Alex Day, Tony Sanchez, and Officer Taylor. Day had been shot and was lying on the ground toward the front passenger side of the BMW, which had its parking lights on.
The car did in fact have its lights on.
Yes, it did.
So if there were stadium lights and parking lights under the stadium seats, is it safe to assume that a reasonable person would have had decent vision under there?
I had no trouble seeing, so yes, I think that a reasonable person would be able to see clearly.
What did you do when you saw him stay on the ground?
The first thing I did was radio for an ambulance. I advised them to enter through the south gate.
Then what?
I approached Alex Day and tried to make her comfortable. The ambulance arrived shortly, and the EMTs immediately cut over her pant leg. Her right knee area was bleeding profusely. She seemed to be in shock and unaware of what was going on.
When you couldn't speak directly to Miss Day, what did you do?
I proceeded to talk to Tony Sanchez, who was visibly shaking. I got a blanket out of my unit and put it around her. I told her to sit down and that if she needed to, she could come down to the station the following morning to give her statement, which she agreed to do.
What did you do in regards to the defendant, Officer Taylor?
Officer Taylor was also visibly shaking. He was sweating profusely and pacing, muttering, "Why couldn't they have just answered? I thought they had a gun."
What was Officer Taylor's response when asked to give a statement?
Officer Taylor said that he would give a statement, but was too shook up to do it right after the shooting occurred.
What did you do about arrests?
Out of professional courtesy, I did not arrest Officer Taylor that night. Instead, I asked him to come down to the station the next day to give a statement.
And did he?
Yes.
Were there any other witnesses that you were able to speak with?
I spoke briefly with the principal of White Mountain High School, Sam Mattis, who had placed the call for backup. Mattis had not seen the incident and had little to add.
After speaking with Principal Mathis, what did you do?
After the ambulance left, my backup and I began to comb the scene for possible evidence.
And what did you find?
I placed into evidence the lock that was near the gate, 2 spray paint cans located immediately in back of the BMW, and 3 empty beer bottles that were located approximately 3 feet from the passenger side of the BMW.
Were there any long-range weapons discovered in or around Alex Day's car?
No, my team and I did not recover any weapons at the scene.
What about bullets or other forms of ammunition?
None were recovered.
What kind of evidence would spray bottles and beer cans provide, Sergeant?
They can provide fingerprint evidence, which can be used to pinpoint who was the one holding the can.
What fingerprints were recovered?
I didn't order that the cans be printed due to the fact that it's difficult to lift prints from that kind of surface. I did request that the lab run fingerprints on the beer bottles, however.
Whose prints did they find on the beer bottles?
It is my understanding that the fingerprints on the beer bottles were matched to Alex Day.
Now, does that mean that she was the one to consume that specific can of alcohol?
Not at all. It simply means that Alex Day came into contact with that specific item.
And what does that mean?
It's possible that she drank from it, but it's also possible that she moved it or that she simply tripped and her hand happened to land on the beer can.
What other evidence was collected?
I noticed gang writing on the west wall of the grandstand approximately 10 feet south of the driver's side of the BMW.
And what did you do with this observation?
I made a diagram of the scene.
Was it exactly pertinent to what had happened that night?
Not necessarily. I suppose it doesn't really have anything to do with the shooting.
Was it ever determined that Alice Day or either of her friends came into contact with that wall during the course of the football game?
No, it's not.
What happened the following day?
I went to the hospital.
Why did you go to the hospital?
I took Alex Day's pants because I had hoped that the lab would be able to conduct gunshot residue tests to determine how close Officer Taylor was today at the time of the shooting.
And what was the result of that test?
Unfortunately, because of how that particular piece of evidence was handled, the lab was unable to do any positive tests at this distance.
Did you take anything else from the hospital?
I also seized Dave's Jets jacket.
Why would you take the jacket?
Jets clothing is sometimes indicative of gang involvement.
Why else would an individual wear a sports jacket? Is it at all possible that Alex was just a regular sports fan?
It is possible, which is why the WMPD has multiple ways of detecting gang members.
I'll come back to that detail in a quick moment. Is that jacket positive, without a doubt, proof that Alex Day was a gang member?
Absolutely not.
What was done with Miss Day's car?
The BMW was searched prior to being released to Alex Day's mother. It contained no contraband, weapons, or alcohol.
Was there anything else?
I obtained a report on Alex Day from the Medical Records Department of County Hospital.
It's Exhibit 1. One moment. This is awkward. We'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit 1. I don't know how to get this to. Okay. There. The jury looked at that too. And what did that report say?
The report gave details as to Dave's condition upon arriving at the hospital, spanning from her admission to the hospital to her discharge.
What's being done about Miss Day's friend, Bobby Davis?
I've attempted to locate Bobby Davis, who had also been present at the scene. I learned Davis was from New York City, so I contacted NYPD and requested that they run a check.
Has NYPD found anything?
They found nothing, and I've been unable to find anyone in White Mountain who has seen Davis since that night, or who knows Davis's whereabouts.
Are you familiar with the gang activity in the White Mountain area?
I am.
Has there been any growth lately in gang numbers?
The police department has been particularly concerned with gang activity in the last 5 years. White Mountain has experienced tremendous growth in that short time, including many people from New York and New Jersey. Some of those people brought their children who were involved with gangs, and therefore transferred some of those gangs to New Hampshire.
Does our police force here in White Mountain have any training when it comes to gangs?
The police department has done some training on how to spot gang members, yes.
What does an officer generally look for?
Generally speaking, we look for age, certain types of clothing, and certain hand gestures.
Is that all?
In addition, if they come from poorer families and are in possession of highly expensive items, that can be an indication that they're involved in illegal activities.
Now, Sergeant, wouldn't you call that discriminatory profiling?
The department would argue with that phrasing, but I personally believe there is some truth to that statement.
Is that a not frowned upon style of coming up with suspects?
Yes, yes it is.
Do non-gang members ever wear these clothes?
Yes,
Do they make these hand gestures as if to mock the people in the gangs?
possibly,
Could they possibly come from a family of low income?
absolutely.
Do they also go through their highly formative teenage years?
I suppose they don't really have a choice on that matter.
What would an influx of gang members do to a policing task force such as ours?
The officers of WMPD have gotten increasingly concerned about getting injured on the job. When we encounter a situation in which we suspect the presence of gang activity, we know to be particularly cautious due to the increasing probability that weapons or illegal drugs could be present.
Now, after these past 5 years, what is your reaction to all of the gang paranoia?
I think the entire city of White Mountain has overreacted to the gang problem. When a city overreacts like that, a situation like this one.
A situation like what? Could you please specify?
A situation where a police officer shoots first and asks questions later, because they're afraid that every group of kids they run across that meet their gang profile are gang members doing a deal, and every move the kids make may be reaching for a gun.
In your professional opinion, does White Mountain have a gang problem?
There's no denying that White Mountain has a gang problem. It doesn't justify, however, the kind of hysteria that we've seen over the past couple of years in the newspapers, parent meetings, and so on. And although it's not going to make me popular to say it, even on the police force,
What were your feelings towards where Officer Taylor was stationed?
I've grown increasingly concerned about Officer Taylor ever since he became the WMHS security guard.
Did he ever voice his opinion about the students or the school as a whole?
It got to the point where he talked about nothing but how gangs were ruining White Mountain and that they had to be eliminated once and for all. On more than one occasion, I heard Officer Taylor call the high school a cesspool of gang activity and say it's up to him to do something about it.
So you say he was driven.
It was like he was on some sort of moral crusade to single-handedly clean up White Mountain. He was going to start with the school.
What was Officer Taylor's opinion of Miss Day?
It was pretty common knowledge on the police force that Officer Taylor was completely convinced that Alex Day was a member of the Main Street gang, a big narcotics dealer who was often armed and the source of most of the problems at the high school.
Do you happen to have any examples of Officer Taylor's distaste for Miss Day?
One evening in late August 2005, as school was about to start for the year, Officer Taylor and I had a few beers afterward. We talked about how frustrating it had been to know that Day was supplying the whole school with crack, but to have been unable, despite months of surveillance, to catch her in the act.
Did he elaborate on the phrase, catch her in the act?
Officer Taylor also said to me that evening, one way or another, I'm going to get Alex Day this year if it's the last thing I do. She's not going to make an idiot out of me any longer. I'm going to teach that punk a lesson.
As his coworker and his superior, did you attempt to comfort or even quiet him down?
I warned Officer Taylor to chill out. If he didn't calm down and get some perspective on this, he was going to do something he would regret.
Did Officer Taylor have any evidence against Day?
I reminded Sidney that he didn't have a shred of evidence against Day, and that it was anybody's guess whether the informants who had implicated Day were telling the truth or lying through their teeth to get Day for some reason or another.
Is there anyone else on the force that believes Miss Day is involved in gang activity?
Aside from Detective Thomas, our big city gang expert, I don't think there's another officer on the force who's convinced that Day is some kind of dangerous drug kingpin. A wannabe maybe, a hanger-on, but no Al Capone.
Now, what is your professional opinion of Detective Thomas?
It's no secret that there's no lost love between me and Detective Thomas. I think the last thing we needed in White Mountain was somebody from New York to tell us how to do things here. It's quite obvious that White Mountain is nowhere near as big, population-wise, as New York City. There was no telling whether or not his way of doing things would work here. Thomas knew I felt that way, and that's why I wasn't invited to join his elite gang unit. In retrospect, I'm glad that I didn't.
Now, what was Officer Taylor's response to your attempt to comfort him?
Sidney wouldn't listen and just got more agitated. Nothing I said helped.
Is there anything else that he added?
Finally, Sidney said to me, "Look, Andy, sooner or later, someone is going to die at White Mountain High School. Maybe it will be a drug overdose, maybe a knifing or a shooting. I just don't want to be some innocent kid who gets tangled up in all this. I want to make sure that if someone has to die, that someone is Alex Day."
It sounds kind of extreme. What does that sound like to you?
All I can say is that if I were Alex, I would have been a little unnerved to have a police officer so hell-bent on taking me down.
How would you describe Sidney's attempts to get Miss Day in trouble?
They failed, every time. Not once did Sidney have any evidence against Alex Day that could pin her to anything, much less hold up in court.
Were repeated failures to get any shred of evidence against Miss Day agitating the defendant, Officer Taylor, even further?
I would say that each failure made Officer Taylor even more driven, almost to the point of a one-track mind. It was all he could think about.
What did you do when you saw Officer Taylor wasn't listening?
When I saw that what I was saying was having no effect on Sidney, I left and did not talk to him again until the night of September 23rd, 2005.
And what was your initial reaction to the event on September 23rd, 2005?
I must say that when I arrived at the scene and discovered that Sidney had almost killed Alex Day, I wasn't surprised.
No further questions.
The defense may begin their cross-examination. Hello, how are you?
Not bad, yourself?
Did you know Officer Taylor prior to this case?
I did.
How did you know him?
Wouldn't say that we were friends, but we'd gone out for a few beers together. We were on the fraternal order of the police volleyball team.
Do you believe Sidney Taylor was used as a scapegoat in a case where evidence was lost?
I did.
On September 23rd, 2005, did you walk in on Alex Day, Tony Sanchez, and Officer Taylor in the stadium?
I did.
Did you interact with Alex Day after he was shot?
I tried to, but she was in shock and unable to provide much information.
Did you find any evidence that Alex Day and Tony Sanchez were involved in any illegal activity that night?
I found some spray paint cans and beer bottles nearby on the ground, but nothing other than that.
Did you find a broken lock, 3 empty beer bottles?
I did find a broken lock and 3 empty beer bottles.
Near her car.
Near her car.
When you ran the fingerprints off the beer bottles, did you find Alex Day's fingerprints on them?
I did.
Did the fresh spray paint on the walls match the colors of the spray paint seen at the game?
He did that.
Did you find a switchblade type knife in Alex Day's right front pocket?
I do not believe so. I'm not sure.
Do you agree that New York Jets clothing is a sign that an individual is involved in gang activity?
It can be.
Was Alex Day wearing a New York Jets jacket?
She was.
Did the medical report on Alex Day show that she had been drinking?
She had.
Did you try to contact Bobby Davis for questioning since she had been present at the scene?
I did attempt to contact Bobby Davis, but I was unable to find her.
Is it true that no one knows where Bobby Davis' whereabouts?
As far as I know, it is true.
Did the police department give officers training on how to spot gang members?
Yes.
Is it dangerous to encounter a situation involving gang activity?
It is.
Is it common for gang members to go to great lengths, like shooting a police officer to protect their contraband?
It can be, yes.
Is it true that you think White Mountain overacted to gang activity?
I do.
Were you concerned about how Officer Taylor was doing his job as a security guard at the high school?
Very.
Did you ever talk with Officer Taylor about Alex Day?
Yes.
Is it true that Sidney Taylor said he didn't want an innocent kid getting hurt because of the gang activity?
He did.
Have you ever been in a situation with a gang member that threatened your life?
I do not believe so.
And have you had any real-life gang activity besides the training you went through?
No.
That's no further questions. Does the prosecution have any more witnesses they'd like to call to the stand?
The prosecution calls up Alex Day to the stand. Please state your name.
Alex Day.
How old are you, Miss Day?
I'm 17 years old. I'll be 18 in December.
Where do you go to school?
I'm a senior at White Mountain High School.
Who lives at home with you, Miss Day?
I live with my mom.
What about Dad?
My parents got divorced a while back, and my parents thought it would be best for me to live with my mom because my dad travels a lot for work. I don't know exactly what he does. I think it has to do with consulting or something, but I'm not sure.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, just outside of New York City.
Did you like your old house?
I liked living in Hoboken. I had a lot of friends there, and there were plenty of things to do. All the great bands came to New York, and I'm a big Jets fan.
What was your reaction when you found out you were moving?
When I found out we were moving to New Hampshire, I was really upset.
Why did you move?
At first, I thought we had no choice. My mom works for ABC and got transferred here to the new recycling plant when one of the New Jerseys closed down. She told me later on that she'd been wanting to get me out of Jersey anyways. She hated my friends and we never did anything bad. Sure, we got rowdy sometimes, but we never got into anything serious.
Did you like it here at first?
I admit that when I got here 2 years ago, I wanted to hang around with the groups I thought my mom would hate the most.
Did you make any friends?
I started going to a few parties, which is where I met Tony Sanchez.
Do you miss your dad?
Yes, I hated moving away from him. He's really cool, not all uptight like my mom.
Do you wear your Jets jacket to school?
I do.
Are you aware of it being against school policy to wear Jets attire to school?
I am, but I can't help it. It's warm, and it's from my dad. I don't see him much anymore, so I like feeling like I can have him close to me at all times. It's really important to me.
Who are your friends here?
I have a few friends, but I think my closest friend here is probably Tony.
And you have a car, correct?
I do. I'm really glad that I was able to drive my car up here when we moved. It would have been terrible being stuck here with no way to get around.
What do you do for fun?
I go to parties, thrown by the Main Street Gang.
Now, why do you hang out with the Main Street Gang?
They throw cool parties, I don't know.
Was Tony ever a member of the gang?
I guess she used to be, but she got out.
Were you ever a member?
No.
Are you aware that you are on the witness stand and can be charged with very serious offenses for lying on the stand?
Yes, I'm aware.
So if I inquire as to your gang member status again, will I receive the same answer?
I know that it looks bad, but I'm not in a gang. We just go there to their parties. Like, yeah, that's kind of often, but Tony and I never got involved with any of their stuff.
Miss Day, is there anything on your record?
As a matter of fact, I never got anything popped for anything more than shoplifting, and that was a bogus charge.
Why was it a bogus charge?
It was on my last birthday, and I had gone to Smith's to get a pack of cigarettes. I saw someone I knew, and I accidentally slipped the cigarettes into my pocket out of habit. Then, boom, I got busted.
Are you usually that forgetful?
I still think it happened because I was so upset about that memo that my guidance counselor, Miss McDonald, said to Principal Mathis was going to send my mom.
What did the memo say to your knowledge?
That I've been trying real hard in school, honest, but then Mrs. McDonald called me into her office to tell me all my teachers said I had a bad attitude and that I was breaking school rules by wearing my Jets jacket and some other stuff. None of it was true.
The information included in the memo wasn't true?
Objection,
Your Honor. Leading questions.
What did your guidance counselor say to you directly in regards to all of this?
I just get tired of my teachers hassling. Oh, sorry. She said that she was going to write a memo to the principal and suggest that she send a copy to my mom.
Did the memo get your mom?
In the end, I guess she never sent it. My mom never said anything to me, and if she'd gotten it, she would have blasted me.
Miss Day, what was your relationship like with Officer Taylor?
I knew who Sidney Taylor was almost from the first day of school after winter break. He stuck to me like white on rice. If I went to my locker, there was Sidney. If I went to the mall, there was Sidney. I remember a bunch of times being in my car at the stoplights. I would just be minding my own business, and who would be in the next lane? Sidney, of course. I got sick and tired of him watching me like a hawk.
So you'd say that he was especially driven in your case?
I'm not exactly sure what case he had against me, but he certainly was driven in trying to pin something on me.
What is your impression of Officer Taylor?
Sidney was always nervous. I have to admit, I enjoyed making him sweat. He was such a loser. Everyone knew he was barely making it on the police force. I heard other cops would rather shoot themselves in the foot and go on medical leave than work with Sidney Taylor.
What, to the best of your knowledge and understanding, was Officer Taylor's impression of you?
I guess he thought that because I went to some of the Main Street gang parties that I was a member and into drugs and guns.
Was Officer Taylor's impression correct?
No, I'm not in a gang, I'm not into drugs or guns. That's why he could never, ever pin anything on me.
How did you feel about that?
It bugged me. By the time Tony had been busted and I had decided that just even hanging around with gang members could get me into a lot of trouble, so I quit going to their parties and I tried to do better at school. I don't want to be stuck in a lousy job like my mom, so I'm going to college. So is Tony.
And then you left. To go where?
I went on vacation to visit my dad in Jersey. I came back with a new Beamer and Sydney's attitude got even worse.
Now, Sergeant Medina testified that police officers on the White Mountain PD are taught that kids with nice cars should be closely watched because they're more likely to be involved with gangs. What was Officer Taylor's reaction to your new BMW?
Sydney wigged out. He just couldn't handle it that someone like me from the wrong side of the tracks was driving a car that was nicer than any car he'd ever set foot in. I knew it bugged him.
But you obtained that car legally. Is the court correct to assume that?
I earned that car. Me and my dad was real proud of me for cleaning up my act, and he got a great deal on it from a guy he used to work with.
So if the car was a gift, why would Officer Taylor have such a negative reaction?
The problem is, if your family is poor, you can't have nice things because the cops will just assume you stole them or bought them with drug money.
Now, Miss Day, take us back to the night of September 23rd, 2005. What were you doing?
On the night of homecoming, I told Tony that I'd pick her up. She'd been released and I was back in school.
Had you had anything to drink that night?
I drank a couple of beers that afternoon. Yeah, I'm not proud of it, but it happened.
What did you bring in your car to the homecoming game?
I didn't bring anything except Tony to that game. Tony barely got out, so she was being super careful because she never wanted to be locked up again. Besides, my dad said I could only keep the car if I stayed out of trouble, and I knew my mom would tell him if I did anything really bad.
What did you do that night?
When I picked up Tony, we left her house and drove to school. As soon as we pulled up to the parking lot, we saw Sydney taking money. As I pulled up, I rolled down the window, but only a little bit because I knew that would bug him. He kind of stuttered and said that we had to pay $1 to park. I said or did something that made Sydney mad. I don't remember what, and he just spaced out. He totally forgot what he was doing, so I pulled forward a little bit and then backed up and said, "Did you forget something, Sydney?" I admit I was sarcastic, but is that a death penalty offense?
What did you and Tony do when you got to the game?
We sat in the stands to watch the game. About halfway through, a friend of mine from New York, Bobby Davis, got to the game. He was in town for the weekend.
Did you invite Bobby to go with you too?
I invited Bobby, yes.
Did you see Officer Taylor in the grandstands?
I did. He was sitting with Principal Mathis.
Did Officer Taylor see you?
Sydney stared at us when Bobby sat down, so yeah, he saw us.
Why was he staring?
I think he was staring because Bobby was wearing a Jets cap, and Sydney thinks that anyone who wears Knicks or Jets clothing is in a gang. Oh, and if you're from a poor family, you're in a gang.
Officer Taylor thinks that all poor people are in gangs.
Those are things he looks for. In Officer Taylor's eyes, Bobby, Tony, me, and more than half the U.S. population are all in gangs.
What happened during the game?
During the game, we went to the concession to get something to drink. When we went back to our seats, we started messing around with the girls in front of us. Some soda spilled on one of them, and she got all bent out of shape and told Sid. It was an accident, though. It's not like we dumped it on her.
Did Officer Taylor see the soda incident?
Yeah, he came over to straighten me out, but I just saluted him.
What about after the game?
Bobby wanted to go for a ride in my new BMW. I told Bobby and Tony to stay in the stands, and I'd bring the car to them.
You went to get the car?
Yes, I did.
Where did you bring the car?
I cut the lock on the south gate with some wire cutters. No one would ever know I'd done it. I drove my car underneath the stands.
When you got the car underneath the stands, what did you do?
Even though the stadium lights were still on, I left my parking lights on and my car running so we could listen to my Eminem CD. Tony and Bobby came down to where my car was. I put the CD on, got out of my car, and we all just stood on the passenger side. There were some empty beer cans right next to my car, but I moved them.
What did you do with the cans?
I just moved them away from my car. I wasn't about to risk getting a flat tire.
Were those your cans?
No, I told you already. I didn't bring any beer or alcohol or anything like that to the game with me.
What happened next?
We were minding our own business when we heard Sydney call out, "What are you kids doing?"
How did you react to the question?
Well, we were kind of surprised.
Why were you surprised?
Well, part of it was because we didn't see him there, but it was mostly because we couldn't believe he'd even asked that. He was close enough to us, and he should have been able to see what we were doing.
He was within reasonable distance of your car?
Absolutely.
How so?
He couldn't have been more than 20 or 30 feet away from us. He should have seen us.
What happened next?
I told Bobby and Tony that Sydney ought to get a life, but we didn't address Sydney directly.
What did you do?
We just stood there. We knew he would be He's standing there all sweaty and stuff, and we just wanted to make him squirm. Tony and I were laughing and telling Bobby how the cops probably wanted Sydney scheduled at the school to keep him off the streets.
Then what?
Tony and I were laughing kind of quietly, but then Bobby straight up laughed out loud.
He laughed out loud?
Yeah, you know, that kind of laugh where you don't want to laugh but you can't help it. Well, that's what Bobby did, and then Tony and I couldn't help but do the same thing.
What do you remember happening next?
After that, we heard a bang. I felt this real bad pain in my right leg. I fell to the ground.
What did Tony do?
Tony got on the ground next to me and was holding me.
What did Bobby do?
Bobby got spooked and ran.
Why would Bobby run?
He's from New York, and when you're in New York, you run when you hear gunshots. I don't know where he went.
What did Officer Taylor do right after firing his weapon?
Sydney came running over to Tony and was yelling stuff at him.
Did Officer Taylor say anything to you?
I heard him say something like, "You kids scared me, where's the gun?" After that, I don't remember anything. I must have passed out.
Miss Day, did you have in your possession any sort of long-range weapon?
No, I didn't have any guns or anything like that. I told you, I'm not in a gang. I don't need a gun for anything.
Did you have any weapons with you at all?
I had my pocket knife with me. Most kids at school carry those around. They're handy to have.
How long was your knife?
No more than like 3 inches long.
So if Officer Taylor was as far away as you say, that knife was not enough to cause him any harm.
Not unless I threw it at him, and I have no reason to bother doing that.
How would you describe your demeanor towards Officer Taylor?
I mean, I was kind of a brat, but I was never violent towards him.
Did you ever say aloud that you wished ill upon him?
All I said was that he was a crap cop. I never said I wanted him dead or anything.
Were you ever absurdly violent towards the officer?
No, I was just a brat.
That is all.
The defense may begin their cross-examination.
So you say your father purchased that car for you?
Yes.
Is there any proof of purchase, any receipts, anything?
I'm not sure. I
So
never asked.
you can't prove that he purchased the car?
No.
Can you prove that he was the one that gave it to you?
I can say that he's my dad who gave it to me, though.
Can anyone back you up on that? Were there any witnesses?
Yes, Mom.
You say you stopped drinking prior to going to the football game, correct?
Yes.
But when you got to the hospital, your blood alcohol content was still 0.06?
Yes.
You'd say that football games are typically a few hours long, right?
Typically.
Don't you think after a few hours the alcohol would be out of your system?
I'm not sure. It all depends on the person.
No further questions?
Does the prosecution have any more witnesses?
No, we do not, Your Honor.
The defense may bring up their first witness.
The defense would like to call Cindy Taylor to the stand. Please state your name before.
My name is Sidney Taylor.
Sydney, how many years have you been serving as an officer?
I've been serving 12 years as both a security guard at the high school and a police officer at the White Mountain Police Department.
In those 12 years, what experience have you gained?
I've gained a lot of experience. I knew what things to look for, nervousness, resonances, and other bulges that could signify dangerous weapons.
So you would know from simply looking at a person if someone were to have illegal items on them.
Yes.
What have you seen at White Mountain in the past few years in terms of gang activity?
I've just seen an increase in gang activity over the past few years. It's just been getting out of hand, and I felt like I had to stop it somehow.
Has the police department done anything to control these gangs? How would you know if kids were involved in criminal activity at White Mountain High School?
I would use my years of experience with force to determine people who were dangerous dangerous and involved with illegal activities.
Were Alex Day and Tony Sanchez involved with criminal activities?
Yes.
At this time, we would like to present exhibits 2 and 3. Why was your work with the police department not going well when you began working at school?
Well, I recently led a drug bust against a powerful city official, and despite doing the right thing, I was only going to go into our department.
Am I right that someone tampered with some of the evidence involving the case?
Yes, someone moved pills that I confiscated from the evidence room. The department tried to blame me for it, but I knew that I couldn't do it. Why would I try to make myself look worse? I've already angered people for taking this case seriously. If I tampered with evidence, I would ruin my case. Just look like a fool.
So what ended up happening with the case?
Well, the case was dropped. The blame was, again, on me. I didn't tamper with the evidence. Like I said before, it wouldn't make any sense for why I would have done that, because it would make me more hated by the department. I take my job very seriously, and I'm sad that I was blamed for something I didn't do.
So would you have been happy if you were fired to become a security guard at the high school?
Yes, miserable at the department, and working at the school would be like a dream for me.
So would you do anything to cause you to have stopped working at the school?
Objection, relevance.
That's not terrible.
Why do you think it's irrelevant?
Because he's talking about something that's not, like, it's not involved with the case, a civil case, and if working, no.
He's an officer,
No,
he's
it's
an
not.
officer at the school, Your Honor.
It's
He was on the job when the accident occurred.
Did you reword the question?
So would you have done anything that could have caused you to lose your job? Tell me about the memorandum that Principal Mathis gave you.
He gave me the extent, he knew the extent of the gang violence going on at the school. He gave me a memorandum that appointed certain individuals as being part of the gang, and among them were Alex Day and Tony Sanchez.
Did Principal Mathis allow you to investigate anything?
Objection? Non-responsive answer?
Responding.
Objected.
Yes, he said that I was allowed to investigate weapons, possession, drug activity, drug use.
Tell me about the training you received and how to pursue gang violence.
I was extensively trained by the president of the White Mountain Police Department, gang specialist Leslie Thomas. She also warned me specifically of Alex Day and Tony Sanchez.
Did you know for a fact that Alex Day and Tony Sanchez were members of the Main Street Gang?
Yes, performance.
How were the two involved with the gang?
Well, Alex Day was the main source of cocaine in the gang, and he oftentimes would carry weapons to protect his stash. Sanchez is simply a gang member. He had also previously been in the juvenile detention center for assaulting somebody with a gun.
Tell me about what you did to gather more information on Day.
I began to follow him, watching his movements and noticing patterns. He was smart and soon realized that I was following him.
Tell me about the events that occurred before the school year of 2005.
Alex Day returned from staying with his father in New Jersey. He had a very nice BMW. He began to throw around amounts of money around, and given that his father was unemployed and living in a poor part of New Jersey, or New Jersey City, it was very likely that he received these large amounts of money from cocaine or guns.
Tell me about the events that occurred on at the football game on the night of September 23rd, 2005.
I was collecting money from cars, making sure that students didn't have any licenses. Dan Sanchez rolled up in Dave's BMW and taunted me. There was a strong odor of marijuana coming from the car. However, I did not have probable cause to search. Later during the game, I saw a student by the name of Bobby Davis, who was wearing the typical Main Street Gang attire of New York Jets clothing, walk up to Sanchez one day. The three began to talk to each other about something that was clearly important. Then, the three left and went somewhere. I attempted to follow them, but lost them in the crowd. I believe that they were making some sort of drug deal. They returned to the stands approximately 15 minutes later. Later during the second half of the game, a girl came up to me and asked me to tell Dan Sanchez to lay off. Apparently the two had thrown a soda into her hair. When I went over to talk to Alex Day, both he, Sanchez, and Davis appeared to be intoxicated or under the influence of some sort of narcotic. Dave's response to me was a salute accompanied with whatever you say, Sid. At the end of the game, I was given the task of ensuring that everybody leave. Principal Mathis and I secured the visitor side and were returning to the home side when we heard screeching of tires leaving the grandstand. Principal Mathis and I had recently secured the lock and shut the gate that would allow cars to drive beneath the stands. The only way that a car would have been there was to cut the lock or destroy the gate altogether. I told Principal Mathis to call for backup, which he did.
So someone would have had to deliberately cut the lock or destroy the gate to enter the grandstand?
Yes.
Yes. Tell me about the rest of the events that occurred that day.
I proceeded to approach the car and identified it as Alex Day's. Three people were standing outside of the car, and at one point, an object changed hands. The object was likely drugs or a weapon. I then overheard a conversation that I believe was about prices. The car was still running. I believe the three individuals were Alex Day, Tony Sanchez, and Bob Davis. I believed that a drug deal was going down and began to get nervous because it was likely that they had weapons and were intoxicated as well. I overheard a voice that I recognized to be Alex Day say, "Get a life, Sid." I then saw a shiny object that appeared to be a revolver. I cannot tell which one had the gun, but there was enough light for me to be certain that it was in fact a gun. It was then pointed in my direction. I proceeded to drop my weapon and fire it in fear.
So, let me just make sure my understanding is correct here. You saw a gun and feared that it would be fired in your direction, especially considering the circumstances that the three were involved with. Sanchez had assaulted someone with a gun and that a drug deal had just gone down.
Yes.
Okay, continue with the description, please.
I did not shoot to kill. I'm a very good shot, and I shot towards the lower portion of the body. I hit Day in the knee. If I were trying to kill him, I would have, but that was certainly not my intention. We were trained to do the sort of thing. I do believe that Day was the person who had the gun when I fired. The reason that no gun was found at the scene was because Davis picked it up and ran after the shot. I did not see Davis pick up the gun for myself. There was no shiny object at the scene suggesting that somebody took it anyway. I ran to Day immediately and I was very upset. No officer wants to shoot a citizen, but it's my belief that if I had not shot it, if I had not shot that Day, that if I had not shot it, would be Day in my seat and me on the ground. I'm certain that these kids were negotiating a drug deal. From my experience, I know, from my experience in training, that drug dealers go to great lengths to protect their profits and will murder if necessary.
Do you feel that you acted within your rights as a police officer that night?
Yes.
Do you feel that you did the right thing?
Yes.
No further questions.
The state may begin their cross-examinations.
So, Officer Tate, you work at White Mountain High School as their police officer, correct?
Yes.
Did you take the job because you wanted autonomy? says in your deposition that you didn't. Do you believe that wearing Judd's clothing signifies gang activity?
Yes.
Did you ever stop and consider that the clothing could be a sentimental object for a high school student that was forced to move away from her father?
No.
Your record shows that in a case involving a drug bust, you were in charge of pills that should have been placed in the evidence room and they were misplaced. Is this true?
Yes.
Is it correct to say that high-up officials in the police department are trying to force you out of the department because you're reckless and aggressive?
Yes.
Is it true that you traded money and cigarettes to high school students to get information? Would you say that kids that would accept money and cigarettes from a police officer were reliable sources?
Yes.
Is there any proof that Alex Day is in the Main Street gang? And if so, what?
He just was wearing Judd's clothing. I just expected that he be.
Is there any proof that she deals cocaine or carries weapons?
No.
Has Alex Day ever been charged for anything more than shoplifting?
I don't believe so.
Did you, in all of your years at White Mountain High School, see or catch Alex Day committing any illegal acts at all?
No, I don't believe so.
Is it correct to say that you take medication for muscle relaxants? You go to stress management classes?
Yes.
I will ask a question that I asked earlier again. When I asked if you traded information for money and cigarettes, you said that you did in paragraph 9. Would you like me to read exactly what you said?
Sure.
When I started working at the high school in the middle of 2004-2005 school year, I knew that the only way I would get information was to develop a network of informants. I did this by trading information for cigarettes, and if the information was good enough, for money. Is it true that you were charged for using excessive force back in 1997?
Yes.
Is it true that you broke a man's hand with a nightstick?
Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant.
Goes to the character of the witness.
Objected.
Object. Can't object.
Is it, it's overruled or something?
Yes.
Not overruled.
Is it true that you drove by Alex Day's house during the summer to see if she was up to anything suspicious?
Yes.
Officer Taylor, do you know the definition of stalking?
Yes.
When you drove by Miss Day's house, did you see anything suspicious at all? When Alex returned to White Mountain, you believe she had a trunk full of crack and guns, correct?
Yes.
And you called Jersey City Police Department to look up Miss Day's father because you assumed he was involved with illegal acts.
Yes.
What did her father's record show exactly?
He lied. No. He won't have this.
Alright, his record is clean, he has not committed a single crime. Now let's go over the night of the football game. You said that you were nervous to walk under the bleachers to approach the car because you thought that Miss Day, Miss Sanchez, and Mr. Davis were on drugs, and that when they pulled in, you thought you smelled marijuana, but you did not ask to search the car. You also thought you witnessed a drug deal while walking over them under the bleachers. Were there any drugs of any kind in or around the car when the scene was searched for evidence? Was there in fact a search of the car?
Yes.
Was any evidence of contraband, drugs, or alcohol present in the vehicle? How far were you standing from the car that Miss Day and Miss Sanchez were leaning on right before the incident? How far were you standing from the car that Miss Day and Miss Sanchez were leaning on right before the incident?
15.
Were the parking lights of the car on?
Yes.
Were the lights of the stadium still on?
Yes.
Did you know who the students were from this distance?
Yes.
You claim to have seen a gun, but not just any gun. You could make out that it was a revolver.
Yes.
If you could not make out you said in your statement that you didn't know who they were, but you also said that you recognized Miss Day's car and heard her voice. Did you or did you not know that this girl was standing in front of you? When Miss Day acknowledged you, what did she say exactly? In your deposition, you said you heard a discussion of prices, and the object that was exchanged could have been a weapon or a parcel of narcotics. Did you have any evidence of their involvement in such things? So you just knew these kids were involved in narcotics and weapons despite your lack of proof? Yes. Is that reasonable? Was she threatening you with a weapon in any way? Did she say anything to you? Was there any gun found at the scene? Is it true that you shot Alex Day in the kneecap? Yes. That is all. Yes, Your Honor.
We'd like to call Sam Mathis to the stand. Do I have to say that? Please state your name for the court.
Sam Mathis.
And where do you live?
I live in White Mountain.
What is your current occupation?
I'm principal at White Mountain High School.
And what is your home life like currently?
I currently have 2 children, married, and try to spend as much time with them as possible.
Why is that?
I believe that it's necessary to spend a lot of time with your children in order to instill the right family values that I consider important.
How did you and Sydney Taylor meet?
We went to high school here.
Have you stayed in touch with Sydney since high school?
We lost track of each other over the years, but in June 2002, we reunited when we played on the same city league softball team.
Did you ever do things with Sydney outside of the softball team?
We went out together one night after a game.
And how did that go?
It was fun.
What did you guys talk about?
Sidney told me about his job at the White Mountain Police Department. While we were talking, we discovered that we had some common interests.
And what were those interests?
We both believed that as a result of the opening of the ABC plan, our city was experiencing a lot of problems with the influx of newcomers.
Were there other times that you and Sydney went out together?
Over the next couple of years, we would go out for dinner or get a coffee together.
And what was that like?
We mostly just talked about police stuff, the gang activity going on in the area. We also talked about the number of single mothers. We agreed that we had to do something about the number of children without fathers because these kids were turning into criminals left and right because they didn't have someone to teach them family values.
Is there anything else that you can remember about these meetings?
Sidney always asked me to pick him up. He said he didn't like driving at night, but I don't know why.
What else did you guys do together?
In July 2004, we both attended the State New Hampshire Law-Related Summer Institute.
And what was taught there?
It was about teens, crime, and the community. We thought it would teach us the skills we needed to recognize and deal with gang activity.
What did you learn?
I learned a lot about how to deal with juveniles and how to turn them away from gang activity by involving them in law-related education programs.
What did you think about the techniques that you learned?
I liked them, but I didn't think they would work on people like Alex Day or Tony Sanchez. I read that they had been released on parole. And we're going back to White Mountain. I believe that they would bring drugs and dangerous weapons into my school.
What happened when they went back to school?
In the fall, once school had started, I instructed my staff to be aware and vigilant. I warned them about Alex and Tony and other students like them. I also banned gang-related clothing.
Did you have any help with all of this?
I met with Leslie Thomas, the police department's gang specialist. She said she would keep an eye on things at the school to see what she would learn.
How did she feel about what you were trying to do?
She liked my memo and thought they were good ideas.
Do you feel that she was helpful?
Yeah, in December 2004, Detective Thomas arrested 2 people who were known members of the Main Street gang at White Mountain. One was arrested for possession of crack cocaine, and the the other for having a loaded gun at school. I think she was very helpful in trying to protect my school.
How did the community react to these arrests?
Parents were very upset. The PTO meeting was held to help, and Detective Thomas gave us some advice about what to do.
And then Sydney Taylor came into the school, is that correct?
Yes, Leslie Thomas offered him a job as security guard for White Mountain High School.
Why did you want Sydney Taylor to work at White Mountain High School?
I knew his job at the police department wasn't going very well because some of the members didn't take his gang crisis seriously enough.
Do you know Sydney to be a very violent person?
No, he's actually the opposite. He said sometimes he had to be violent, but he always waited until it was absolutely necessary. In fact, he told me that one police captain had told him that he needed to respond more quickly or else his life would be in danger.
So you'd say that he's a pretty peaceful person?
Absolutely. Everyone who knows Sydney knows he's really peaceful, sometimes almost passive.
Now tell me what you did on September 23rd of 2005.
Sydney and I both attended the White Mountain High School homecoming game.
What was Sydney doing at that game?
He was working, making sure the place was safe, so I didn't see him for the first part, but he did come sit with me for a while until he had to leave because of Alex Davis being.
What did Sydney have to do after that?
After the game, she had to secure the school grounds without being in control of the stadium.
Did you hear or see anything during your patrol?
Yes, both me and Sydney heard the tires squealing and we saw a car under the grandstand. There was only one way that could have gotten under there because we'd already secured the gate, so someone must have cut the lock.
What did you end up doing?
Sydney told me to call for backup, so I ran to the phones on the visitor side and called police.
What did the police have to say?
They said that there was a unit in the area and would arrive in a few minutes.
Did you go and find Sydney after that?
Yeah, I ran to the home side of the field, and then I heard a gunshot.
What did you see?
I saw Sydney standing by Alex's car with Tony Sanchez, and the kid that was with him earlier was running away.
Did Alex look hurt?
Yes, you could tell he was shot and in pain.
Were you surprised afterwards that Alex was part of the problem that night?
Not at all. She has been nothing but trouble ever since coming to the school.
How does Alex do in school?
Horrible. As a matter of fact, Alex's counselor advised me in her monthly report that all of Alex's teachers have reported failing grades and attitude problems.
Did you take any action to help her improve in school with her attitude?
Of course. I sent a copy to the report to Alex's mother along with a handwritten request that she schedule a conference with me, but she did not respond.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the shooting or this case?
Although I did not see the shooting, I'm sure that what this Sydney did was in self-defense. Alex is a dangerous person. We have to stop these people that are ruining our schools.
No further questions.
Thank you again for
Principal Mathis, are you and Officer Taylor friendly, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you went to high school together, is that correct? Yep. And you played softball together?
Yep.
All right. And you often went out for coffee together, right?
That's correct.
And do you believe that hiring Officer Taylor at the high school was a good thing?
Yes.
And Officer Taylor confided in you his obsession with gang activity involved in White Mountain?
Yes.
You showed a particular interest in Miss Alex Day. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I would say that.
He always wanted to pin something on her, is that correct?
Yeah, every once in a while.
He always wanted to find a reason to arrest her. Is that correct?
That's correct.
He was particularly motivated in his crusade, is that right?
Yeah.
You and Officer Taylor both resented Alex, right?
I wouldn't say I resented Alex.
But Officer Taylor did?
Every once in a while.
Alright. So you know Alex Day relatively well, correct?
Yes.
And you thought very lowly of Alex in the things.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Alright. And you believe that she was a member of the Main Street Gang?
Yes.
You believe she was also peddling drugs in your school?
Yeah.
Alright. And you believe she was bringing weapons in your school?
Yes.
You also believe that she was bringing contraband in your school?
Yes.
You have proof that she's doing all of this, correct?
No.
Of her gang status and her drug dealing habits?
No, but she's part of the Main Street Gang.
I'd like to present Exhibit 6 to the principal, and I would like him to carefully read the first highlighted passage.
These ones right here?
Yes.
We took several steps. The first step was to ban all gang-related clothing at the school during school hours. At the present time, such clothing includes any item bearing the insignia of the New York Jets or Knicks and the Chicago Bulls or White Sox.
Interesting. Can you read the next one?
The list was developed from information provided by teachers and various members of the White Mountain Police Department.
Alright, and here's what the final says. You should not act differently towards these students than towards any other students. They have not been convicted of gang activity in any way, and these are only suspicions on our part. Now, even though you had no proof or evidence against these students, did you feel it was the need to notify the school about them?
Yes.
Okay. And you believe that that because she was wearing a Jets jacket, she was a member of the gang?
Yes.
Okay. So if these people are in gangs because of their age and what they wear, is every sports fan in your school in a gang?
Not necessarily.
Is every sports fan between the ages of 14 and say 24 in gangs?
No.
Okay. So you're judging children based on what they wear, not who they are.
I guess you could say that.
So though you have no proof, you just know that Alex is a bad guy.
Objection, Your Honor, battery the witness.
I don't have a definition for that one.
It means he's asking too many questions at once. He's leaving space for him to answer his phone.
Of course she's gonna say that, she's the defense attorney.
I'm not the defense attorney, I'm the prosecutor.
Judge.
Sustained.
Whatever.
How often have you spoken about this?
Just every time I see him in school.
How much do you actually know about Alex aside from grades and attendance?
I know the people that he hangs out with.
Do you know their names?
Yes.
Principal Mathis, what I'm hearing is that despite your lack of a professional relationship with Alex Day, you know that she's a bad kid who does drugs and uses guns and violence on a daily basis. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So correct my statement, Principal Mathis, you obviously have a great knowledge of all your students. So what are Alex Day and Tony Sanchez like at home? How many friends do they have? What do they do for fun? What's their favorite color? Their favorite song? Their favorite sport?
Irrelevance, their favorite color, really? What does that have to do with anything that's related to this case?
Noting their relationship with the students, it's completely irrelevant.
You can have a relationship with someone without knowing their favorite color.
Okay. So, you know nothing of these things, correct?
Not as much as I probably should know.
Okay. Principal Mathis, let's assume for a moment that you are correct in saying that these students are involved in a gang. Is that any reason enough to kill them?
No.
All right. Does that justify shooting a child? No more further questions.
Does the defense have any more witnesses that relate to
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Leslie Thomas to stand. How you doing, Leslie? You're good. How much experience do you have with police force?
8 years and 1 month.
Did you specialize in any certain kind of law enforcement in your 8 years you're in law enforcement?
Yes, the last 3 years I specialized in gang unit.
Why were you hired in the White Mountain Police Department?
To form a gang unit here in response to the
Why do you choose to work in White Mountain?
I'm experienced in handling gang problems.
Have you been certified in gang units?
Yes.
Would you say you have a good amount of success in gang activities?
Yes.
How would you detect if someone was a gang member?
They usually wear New York Jets jackets.
Would you consider yourself an expert in detecting gang activity?
Yes, I would.
What qualifies you to be an expert in detecting gang activity?
I have arrested hundreds of gang members in LA and that's been so long.
Do you believe that the actions Sydney Taylor took were appropriate?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you consider the effect of gang activity on White Mountain in relation to Los Angeles? What made you believe there was Main Street gang activity in White Mountain?
I saw Main Street graffiti
see, so I told Principal Mathis.
Did you speak to the principal of White Mountain?
Yes, sir.
Did he have any concerns regarding White Mountain High School?
He got the rose coat.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to admit this evidence. Do you know of any students at White Mountain High School that have a criminal record?
In August, we caught Tony Sanchez. She was beating up a kid and threatening him with a gun.
What happened at the time he was caught?
We got her off the streets. She was committed to detention, but she was on parole.
Were there any more issues with students at White Mountain, including gang activity?
In December, we busted 2 other kids. One for possession of crack, and the other carrying a loaded .5 caliber.
What actions did the principal take involving this?
He called an emergency meeting with PTO.
How do you know Sidney Taylor?
I hired him to keep an eye on things because they were getting out of hand after school.
Do you have any idea about who was linked to gang activity specifically?
Alex Day. I had no hard evidence at this time, but I had a hunch.
Was there any special evidence found linking Alex Day to participating in gang activity?
On September 23rd, 2005, Sydney saw Alex Day with a gun in his hand.
Do you think that Officer Taylor is actually reasonable?
Yes.
Did the evidence provided against Tony and Alex coincide with what they said involving gang membership?
No, Alex was seen with a gun, and Sanchez had a crime background. They both were seen wearing a check card.
How do you suspect that someone is involved in a gang?
They usually go to gang parties 3 to 4 times a week, and they usually don't socialize with non-members.
How would you describe Andy Medina's police skills?
I really don't think much of Medina's police skills. Also, he never really appreciated the serious threat gangs pose.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Prosecution may deny cross-examination.
Good morning, Detective. How are you? So you've been an officer for quite some time, is that correct?
Yes.
You spent a lot of time chasing gangs?
Yes.
Most of your experiences with big cities and their gang tendencies, correct?
Yes.
In fact, in your deposition, you said yourself that you served on a federal task force. You created a manual, correct?
Yes.
And that was about gangs in cities with populations greater than 1 million people? Detective, are you aware of the population of White Mountain? Are you aware of the whole state of New Hampshire's population? Detective, the population of New Hampshire as a state is just under 1.5 million. The population of White Mountain is barely 5,500 people.
Objection, Your Honor, immaterial.
would
Population
you let
size
me
has
get
nothing
there?
to do with gang violence.
Okay.
Gang violence is gang violence regardless.
Am I correct to
Gang
assume
violence.
that, okay.
Let her finish.
Somewhat.
Am I correct to assume that things in White Mountain are different than things in LA?
Yes.
So for a small New England town, you would use different techniques than you would in a city as large as LA, correct? So for all of the techniques you've used throughout your entire career, you couldn't use most of them when you got to White Mountain, correct? You've read all the books about gangs? You've attended all the conferences about gangs?
Yes.
You've arrested quite a few gang members. But all of these happen in a big city, LA, with a big shot FBI, is that correct?
Yes.
So all of your experience tells you that clothing and age are good indications of gang status. And you testified in your deposition that, and I quote, "The fact that Alex Day and Tony Sanchez claim that they were never in a gang does not surprise me. It does not mean, however, that they are not gang members." This is something you said, correct?
Yes.
So they can never prove you otherwise. You'll never believe a child when they deny being in a gang. And any teenager wearing paraphernalia from certain sports teams is automatically in a gang. They automatically peddle guns. They automatically peddle drugs.
Objection,
They're
Your Honor.
automatically a bad.
Badgering the witness.
She's answering them.
Doesn't
giving
mean
her
that it's
time.
not badgering the witness.
Detective, how does a student or a teenager prove to you that they are not in a gang?
By not wearing the check card and going to parties before high school.
In your opinion, you testified in your deposition that you specifically warned Officer Taylor about Alex Day.
Yes, I did.
Do you have any proof against Alex Day? You don't have proof that she's a dealer or that she's into guns? Do you have proof of her gang member status? No, that's right. Who someone hangs out with has little impact on who they are. And even though she denies any involvement, you still believe that Alex Day is a member of the Main Street Gang. You also noted in your deposition that Officer Taylor was single-minded in his pursuit of these gangs. Was Officer Taylor tailing any other potential gang members? Was Officer Taylor working any other potential cases? So Officer Taylor was actually single-minded in his pursuit of Alex Day. You said yourself that he was driven and not working any other cases. All of his focus was going directly to Alex Day, correct? All he wanted to do was rid the world of Alex Day. Detective, you heard the testimony of Sergeant Medina. Does that sound like a threatening remark to you? Do you really believe that an adult trusted with so much responsibility should be making commitments to belittling the life of a child? Do you believe that working like a demon to get Alex Day was an okay thing for an officer of the law to be doing? Are you aware that what Alex does in her free time has little to do with this case? Are you aware that... Are you aware of what Officer Taylor is being charged with? Could you explain that to the court for me?
Second-degree murder for shooting Alex Day.
And does second-degree murder have anything to do with a child's gang membership? Does that justify shooting a child? It does.
Does the defense have any more witnesses they would like to call on the stand?
No more witnesses, Your Honor.
All right. At this time, the prosecution may begin to give their closing argument.
As we come to an end, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, looking back upon this case, it positively, beyond a reasonable doubt, shows a clear sign of second-degree murder. This case is about an officer's poor judgment that created bodily harm against Alex Day without a reasonable doubt. Not about whether or not Alex Day is a gang. Officer Taylor purposely fired his weapon against my client with no evidence that my client even carried a firearm. He just assumed. RSA 62705 of physical force in law enforcement clearly states a law enforcement officer is justified in using deadly force only when he or she reasonably believes such force is necessary. Now, when looking back on September 23rd, 2005, when all three witnesses saw Officer Taylor, no warning was heard by my clients and her friends. Even if they did or didn't hear the warning, it shows that Officer Taylor is not a well-respected officer of the law at the school, because most students in White Mountain High School don't even listen to Officer Taylor anyway. He even lied twice on the stand today. He told you that he did not give money or cigarettes in exchange to his informants for information. Okay? He also said that he was 15 feet away from the car. He was 4 times greater distance. Officer Taylor was 60 feet away from the car. Lying on the stand and following high school students is not a good way to earn respect. My clients nor her friends had reason of suspicion that could possibly cause harm to anyone. So when Officer Taylor drew his weapon facing my client, an officer is never to shoot to cause self-harm unless one is about to cause deadly force, which my client never created. Officer Taylor's over-obsession with Alex Day was and is atrocious and rotten, to say the least. So tell me this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. How would you feel if some cop was following you around all day, every day? I know for a fact it would bother me for Officer Taylor to stalk Alex into the football stadium and follow her and her friends underneath the bleachers is disgusting and utterly foul. So when you look back at this case, think to yourself, is stalking an innocent teenage girl really necessary when there are other known kids at school more involved in drugs or alcohol? And is it really a good idea to fire upon a person with no firearms or, in general, a weapon in their possession? Thank you for your time.
All right, the defense, thank you for their closing arguments.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Sidney Taylor is innocent. He has done nothing wrong, and he has acted completely within his rights as a police officer. In fact, the wrongdoing here has been committed by the prosecution, Alex Day. Alex and his little posse have been causing trouble for years now, and it's time someone put a stop to it. If you, the jury, convict my client, Sidney Taylor, of attempted murder, the violence will only increase. It will show gang members they can get away with almost anything. Sidney Taylor is a good man. He has not, nor will he ever, pondered the thought of committing murder. What has occurred here is a police officer who is protecting the public, making the world safe, doing his job. He is taking gang violence down. He is protecting you. If you convict him of this so-called crime, you are telling police officers everywhere that you do not appreciate what they do. Can you imagine what the world would be without police officers to enforce the laws and keep you safe? Tyrants like Alex Day and Tony Sanchez will rule the streets, and terrible violence would be an everyday occurrence. On another note, the fact that Tony Sanchez and Alex Day met in the hospital on the night of the shooting for an extended period of time significantly diminishes the credibility of their cases. Their stories are too good. They are too perfect. They match exactly. How long does it take for someone to make sure their friend is okay? Certainly not 30 minutes. In fact, 30 minutes seems like a pretty long time for two young girls who need rest to check up. Also, Alex Day's blood alcohol level of 0.06 again lowers the credibility of their statements. Alex Day's father, an unemployed resident of Jersey City, could not afford to make his own house payments, let alone buy his daughter a new BMW. Tony Sanchez claims that neither Alex Day or herself have ever been in a Main Street gang. Alex Day, however, stated that Tony was, in fact, a member of the gang. The two must not have talked about that part of their story when they met in the hospital. Yes, Officer Taylor exchanged cigarettes for information. He exchanged these cigarettes off of the school's grounds, only with students of age 18 or older. That is completely legal. Sidney Taylor did not shoot Alex Day because he thought Alex Day was in a gang, like the prosecution suggests. He shot because he feared for his life. Officer Taylor even tended to be too slow protecting himself, as Principal Mathis stated earlier. Also, he did not lie on the stand. He was confused. He didn't know the information. Did you get confused? Also, he was not 60 feet. As Alex Day said in her statement, he was about 20 feet, which is what he said, 15 to 20 feet. That's all.
All right, so the jurors are going to meet and deliberate. Do I give them these documents?
Yes.
Look over. All right, so if one of the members out of
How do I get out? Stop.
All right, you are to base your judgment off the facts of the case. Nothing outside of this courthouse should be taken into account. So please follow other bailiff Bozeman to your location.
Hi, Jenny. So you basically going against it.
His deposition said 16 feet, and you're listening to R5 and not.
It says 20 feet on there.